Now, a big debate this week on interest rates, which affects every single person in this country, especially people with mortgages. They stayed at 5.25% on Thursday. This was after inflation down again to 3.4%. That is a good thing, I'm sure, although prices, of course, are still rising by 3.4%. People talk about it as if there's no inflation anymore. Of course there is. Well, Dr. Roger LAMBASTS is with us. He is a fair money champion, as is Peter Cardwell, who is a business coach. They have opposing views on this. Roger, great to have you on the programme at long last. I've been wanting to have you on for a while, and now we're finally together, united on screen. And thank you to Peter for joining us as well. Roger, maybe you could tell me your thoughts on what you think should happen with interest rates.
Well, I've been saying since the very first interest rate hike a year and a half ago that it's a big mistake to raise interest rates because they have no effect whatsoever on the kind of inflation that we have in this country, Peter, as opposed to the United States. We have non-consumer driven inflation. Our inflation is mainly coming from food and energy and materials and services and exacerbated by foreign wars, etc. Whereas in the States, they've got a lot of money that consumers are spending all over the place. So when they raised interest rates, their inflation dropped like a rock by more than half, almost overnight. We have here the Bailey-osaurus, Andrew Bailey and his thick-skinned colleagues at the Bank of England who won't listen to anybody, and they raised interest rates 14 consecutive times without it having any effect whatsoever on inflation. Cost-push inflation, those food and energy prices always fall by themselves and adjust. And previous Bank of England administrations left interest rates alone when we had this. So this has been a huge mistake which has wrecked our economy.
A huge mistake which has wrecked our economy. Peter, what do you make of what Roger has said there?
Well, look, I can't disagree. It has wrecked the economy. But if you look at history, over the last 100 years, the average interest rate has been 9.1%. I think, yes, putting up the interest rates has been kind of difficult for people. But the reality is a lot of people since 08, 09 have built an entire economy on low interest rates, on 1% interest, 0.5% interest rates. That was never going to be sustainable.
Lots of people have bought houses thinking interest rates would stay low as well, Peter, and they're suffering with 5.25%.
Exactly. And I don't think we're going to go back down to the interest rates that people are expecting. And because people built their lives around 0.5%, 1%, I mean, we've only seen a tranche of people come off fixed rate mortgages. Over the next 2 years, we're going to see a lot more people come off those fixed rate mortgages. And they're going to be, if they're already quite geared up as it is, quite stretched, it's going to tip them over the edge.
And when it tips it over the edge, and I mean, this is not just a few people, we're talking about perhaps hundreds of thousands of families that are going to be tipped over the edge if they come off these fixed rate interest rates. What will happen, Peter, do you think? Because have we seen much of an effect of that so far? Because people are coming off them all the time. The political parties are talking about it, saying that this is a major thing.
I mean, if we look at the 70s and 80s, it wasn't uncommon for people to have to sell their houses or lose their houses. We haven't seen much of that yet. And I think a lot of that was due to the fact that during COVID and lockdown, people managed to save a considerable amount of money and they didn't get burning through it. But with high inflation, uncertainty in the markets, people are burning through that money. But I wouldn't be surprised if we're back to the position where people are losing their homes again.
Roger, what do you make of this?
Well, I understand exactly what Peter is saying, but I mean, I'd like to clarify this because I think there's some real mistakes that people make because mainly the media, most of the media makes the mistake. They don't see it. First of all, we've got think tanks are reporting almost 500,000 businesses just about ready to go to the wall, to go broke because of the crushing burden of interest rates. I'll come back to that in a second. And mortgage arrears are already up by more than 50%. So I think Peter is right that we are going to see people losing their homes. The second thing is that people talk about interest rates over a period of years, but you know, the fundamentals change dramatically. House prices, multiples towards salary levels, et cetera, et cetera. If you read reports like the Leeds Building Society, A 6% mortgage rate today is equivalent to a 25% mortgage rate in the 1980s. Can you imagine owning a home and a mortgage at 25%? I think the second thing, or third thing rather, that people are missing is we live in a vacuum here, a bit of a goldfish bowl. The United States and much of the rest of the world just doesn't have this problem. And it's rip off Britain as usual. We get ripped off here by our quote unquote leaders and regulators more than just about any other civilized country. Those other countries, you buy a house, you get a 30-year fixed rate mortgage. You don't let the banks, exploit you every 3 to 5 years.
Should we go that way in this country, Roger?
Of course, we should have gone that way 200 years ago. People keep talking about it, but just like the post office scandal, just like the loan charge scandal, just like our electricity prices costing at least double, if not 4 or 5 times what they should, because they're tied to the international gas market price. There is one scandal after another that successive governments, revolving doors, big jobs in banks and energy companies when you retire, blah, 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 won't address, and the British public gets screwed every time. Of course, not only can you get a 30-year mortgage, Peter, but when you sell your house, if you had a particularly good mortgage deal, you had a 2.8% mortgage and now mortgages are 3.2. You can actually sell your house for more.
Yeah.
Because if the buyer would qualify for a mortgage at your lender of his own, then he can take over your mortgage.
Yeah. And Peter,
that's how the world works. Why are we getting shafted like this?
Peter,
and final point, if I may.
Yeah, go for it.
Then people turn around and say, well, wait a minute, there are 7 times more savers than there are mortgagors. They're the ones who are getting shafted because with all these interest rate rises, we don't want interest going down. Well, that would be great if the banks ever shared what they earn properly with savers.
Well, indeed. And Peter, as a business coach, as someone who is talking to businesses which are presumably having trouble, some of your clients, for example, that's why I've called it a business coach, or at least part of the reason. What would you say to them and their workers as well about the state of the economy at the moment?
It's tough. It's tough. A lot of the companies out there, they were encouraged to take out bounce-back loans because they were forced to close, or C-bills, defer your corporation tax, defer personal tax, defer.
Okay.
On the principle that things will get better.
Well,
then no one saw Ukraine coming. No one saw inflation coming. And the reality is, for so many companies, it's not for all of them, but for so many, they've struggled to get out of the hole.
Well, hopefully better times are ahead. Peter Buckler, who's a business coach, and Dr. Roger Gewolb, who is a fair money champion. Thank you both very much indeed for joining us.